Well, cheers, everyone. Thank you for joining me. This is the New Populist, and I am Dave Brown, and we are celebrating, or at least happy to acknowledge the far right-wing, quote-unquote, government that has been elected in Italy. It appears that Italy will have their first female prime minister, something that we should all be celebrating. We want to have women advance. But apparently, to the left, this is the wrong kind of advancement. Now, it's funny. They say that they want to promote minorities, promote women. And I can tell you, as a black conservative, they want to promote you, but only if you're the right type of stuff. So, do I get any credit for being a black conservative? Absolutely not. And so, we have this potential, or this prime minister who is going to be the first female. And they're calling her essentially the face of the patriarchy. Now, remember California with Larry Elder? There was an article in the LA Times where they said that he was the black face of white supremacy. This is how it goes. They're so extreme on the left that any female, any black person, not only do you get no credit, you get negative credit. Because you are a sellout, you're perpetuating horrible things in the name of the group of people who is oppressing you. So Larry Elder, you're selling out to the white man, and this prime minister or future prime minister in Italy, she is selling out to the patriarchy who is enabling her and who she's protecting. This is how leftism works. Now, I like to compare what they're saying about her to MAGA, because it's essentially the exact same thing. There was an article in The Atlantic, and of course, The Atlantic is a far left rag, and they, of course, push the most radical stuff. But they go through and they basically attack her, and they say that this is the rise of fascism again in Italy. And once again, what is fascism? Does she represent fascism? Now, if you look at her beliefs, and I'm not going to go through all of them because I'm not in Italy, I don't know her that well, but her beliefs really have nothing to do with real fascism. We invoke Benito Mussolini without remembering what exactly it is that he did. Are there people going around Italy right now in groups wearing uniforms, beating people up for disagreeing with them? That's what happened in Italy. So there's all these comparisons to fascism. When you actually look at it, there's nothing there. But if you want to know what Mussolini said or what he thought, you can read his autobiography. And of course, this is from himself. So, of course, he's puts himself in a better light than he actually deserves. But even here, he's pretty straightforward about talking about going around and thumping the communists, which isn't the worst thing, but he's pretty graphic about what he did. And if you read his book and hear what he says, and you see what the actual fascist was, there's no comparison to, say, Trump or any of these European politicians that are right-leaning. And so these are just words they say, because when you hear fascism, you get this image in your head, and it works to slander the opponent. So what does she actually believe? Now, if we go through this article at The Atlantic, it talks about her being in the mold of Viktor Orban, the Hungarian president. She told the Washington Post that the so-called globalist ideology that aims to consider as an enemy everything that defined you, everything that has shaped your identity and your civilization. And it's funny because the left talks about globalism and what they want it to be, which is the sort of a multicultural, supranational, global citizen, no borders, where national identity sort of kind of erodes away. They say this pretty much. And when we repeat it back to them, they get insulted and pretend like we're saying something that they never said. And that is actually the beauty of libs of TikTok. They say something, we repeat their words back, and better yet, in her example, she shows what they're saying, and they lose their minds. Oh, we're mischaracterizing them. Wait, all she's literally doing is replaying what you said. There's no way to make that or edit that or take words out of context. You could try to do that, but she's not making any cuts. She just plays what they said, and these idiots say the most incredible things that represent the lunacy on the left. Now, another thing the left does, and they do this with her, she talks about immigration. That's a big issue in Italy. A lot of immigration coming out of Africa. And she mentions that here, let's see what it says here in this article. She says that George Soros, an international speculator, which he was speculating on the financial markets. That's how he made his money. Who finances global mass migration. Well, yeah, he supports open borders. He supports multiculturalism and immigration. Nothing untrue in that. But what this article does is says that it evokes a great replacement theory. And this is one of the left's tactics. You point out that the EU and Canada and the United States openly brags about multiculturalism. They say, as Joe Biden said in the United States, that in 20 or 30 years, white people will be the minority. And that's not done by accident. That is done through a migration policy. So you point that out, and they immediately say you're being racist and that you're evoking the Great Replacement theory. And what that theory is, there's a French guy who came up with it, was that he was basically saying the policy was to replace whites in European countries. Now, are they going to replace them? Nah, not really. They're just, over time, there's going to be a smaller majority and even at some point a minority of white people in Western countries. So they immediately conflate us pointing out their immigration policies and what it's going to do with a quote-unquote far-right theory that's racist. And this happens all the time. We say one thing and they conflate it with something else that's much worse. Florida, the Don't Say Gay bill. Well, first of all, it never says that. But we say we don't want sexuality being taught in schools, and the left says you hate gays. And you're scratching your head going, what did we say that ever implied that? But that's the game the left plays. Whatever we say, they immediately connect it to some far-right, racist, extreme ideology. And we see that with this Anon stuff, where they're calling certain Republicans conspiracy theorists for following this what's it called again? The Annan conspiracies. I forget the exact name, but that conspiracy does exist on the internet. How many people actually support that? I couldn't tell you. It's nonsense. No one in the Republican Party of any significance actually supports that garbage. But of course, you mentioned the election or something like that, and all of a sudden you're connected with this online conspiracy theory. Who, I don't know. I'm almost convinced that this could be a CIA operation, some psyop to plant nonsense in the right side of the political spectrum. It's so stupid. And again, no one with credibility actually, follows that garbage at all. But back to this Italian politician. Is she that extreme? Is she a fascist? Well, she definitely is on the right when it comes to cultural issues. She's a Catholic. She believes in the nuclear family. She doesn't support gay adoption. And you're certainly allowed to say that perhaps from the social viewpoint, perhaps she's too far right for you. That's fine. But again, does this mean this person's a fascist? Again, know the definition of fascism. Private and public sector come together and they coerce you to go into one direction. Again, from a social aspect, that's not fascism at all. It's just being a socially conservative person, and which to your view might be too far. To other views, people out there, they support that. If you're a very conservative Christian person, you support that as well. And let's not call people who are very religious as being fascist now. And this is the direction we're going, where anybody who's religious and actually follows their religion correctly can now sort of be called a fascist, because that's what they're doing with her. And again, her viewpoints have nothing to do with economics. Matter of fact, I can't see any criticism of her economic policy or her policy as far as government fiscal policy. Everything is focusing on her religion and her talking about traditional Italian values and the family. That's all they're attacking. And it makes you wonder why that's so threatening to them. Why the left, why the globalists are so against any European nation maintaining its identity, its cultural and ethnic identity. Why that's such a problem? Because we never see this really pushed in other countries. We have Western countries or developed countries like South Korea and Japan who are very homogeneous, and no one ever says that this is racist. You don't really hear that much. It's only in the Western European countries, only in the United States and Canada, South America, Africa, Southeast Asia. No one talks about this. So this is a kind of a white European thing to attack national identity. And of course, I always go back to communists back in the early 20th century. That's what they were preaching back then, post-Russian Revolution, in Germany and in Italy. They were hoping that after the Russian Revolution, that the revolution would spread throughout Europe, and we would have this global revolution take place. And one thing the media, the left, often leaves out when they talk about Mussolini and Hitler is the fact that there were active bands of communists in both those countries pushing to overthrow the government and to usher in this new communist order. And that allowed people like Hitler and Mussolini to put that up as something that the nation should fight against, and why they got followers, because now their ideologies were of course wrong, but the people they were fighting, these communists, were equally as destructive, and that's why they were able to get a following, because people did see these communists going around and they were rabble-rousing. The German Revolution ended in several communists being hung by the German government. And then this same thing was happening in Italy, which is why he got together his band of fascists, and they went around beating people up. They're often, again, beating up communists. Doesn't make it right, but it's pointing out that when the left goes too far and goes crazy, there's a reaction. And the media always covers up for the left. And in the United States, for example, we have the Antifa crowd, we have the Black Lives Matter, we have the Portland riots next to that courthouse in Seattle, where they formed their autonomous zone. We saw the Trump rallies where people walking to the rally would be attacked by leftists. That political violence is never really condemned by the media. We conservatives have one day where we riot at the Capitol, and a year and a half later, we're still talking about it. People are going to jail. It's the overthrow of the government. It's the biggest disaster since 9/11, which of course is absolutely insulting for anybody who suffered a loss on 9/11. That comparison is so putrid. But that's what the left does. And what they do, they get a pass on. They can be violent as heck. No one, the media doesn't condemn them. But we on the right, we make one mistake, and boy, they're going to ride that forever as far as they can, and they're certainly trying right now. So that's the situation we're in. In Italy, United States, we are facing a media, a system that has essentially criminalized our politics. Anybody who disagrees with them are fascists. They're totalitarians. They're trying to overthrow democracy, and it's really a tough sort of paradigm or a tough situation to fight against, because you're sort of always behind the eight ball. You're always on your back fighting. And that's why we voted for Donald Trump, because he came out punching. And his reward for having won that election is that they're still trying to throw him in jail. And that's how the system reacted against anybody who would threaten their power and shed light onto their corruption. They recoil and they get nasty, and that's what we're seeing right now. And we're going to see the European press and the European countries really start to turn up the heat on the people in those countries who are on the right. In Italy, we saw Sweden push back a little bit, and they're really going to focus on, again, turning these people into monsters like they have in the United States. Anybody who's on the right side of the political spectrum. We are in a new age now where politics are criminalized, and they are pushing so hard, these globalists, these whatever you want to call them. They no longer have any boundaries. They're not even pretending there's boundaries. And that's what's kind of crazy. And what people are realizing now was, at least 15 years ago, we pretended that there was some sort of equality under the law, that there was some sort of restraint. Now it's all gone. Somebody was just arrested, I think, in Pennsylvania, a father, where 25 FBI agents came to his house over something that should have been a local issue. 25 FBI agents show up to arrest him, bang on the door. And it's time for us on the right to really rethink not just the FBI, but I hate to say it because I have friends in law enforcement and family and stuff, but there's a time that's going to come where we're going to have to ask them where your loyalties lie, because we can't use the excuse, I'm just following orders. That's the old thing we've heard from the Nazis. They were just following orders. Well, at some point, we have to ask the same question of law enforcement, FBI, people who work within our government, working to oppress people, working to take away their civil liberties and their liberties in general. That's a question we on the right have to ask of our people in law enforcement. Our support for law enforcement is two ways. We support them because they support us. And if their support for us is gone, then, well, perhaps we have to rethink how much we support them. And that's ugly, and that sucks, but that is the new reality we live in right now. And it's not going to get better anytime soon. That's the way it is. Well, that's it for now. Again, if you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.